Greetings, church. My name is Matt Ratliff, and I'm blessed to serve as the pastor at Haney Chapel United Methodist Church. If you're joining us for the first time, or if you're one of our regular members, be welcomed in the strong name of Jesus Christ. This week we wrap up our sermon series called Because God. For the last 5 weeks, we've been taking a look at some of the more familiar episodes in the life of Jesus and asking why. The lectionary has given us a guide named Paul, who wrote a letter to Christians in Rome that has helped us as we explored these passages. This week, we will end this journey by beginning with Paul. In chapter 12 of the letter to the Romans, Paul writes a very plain directive. He implores the church, let love be unfeigned. In other words, let it be sincere and without hypocrisy. If it is fake, if it is solely self-serving or in any way ulterior, it isn't love. That is a transaction, and it is manipulative. Per the usual, Paul isn't just going to leave it there. He goes on to say, love that is unfeigned is love that is detesting evil and holding fast to what is good. Paul often divides responsibilities before the church by a center of attention, channeling our workflow into 2 categories, inside and outside. That work we do within our church community, and that called ministry in the world beyond our 4 walls and our membership. This is an inside lesson. One of the problems we have being Christian in the world today is a tendency to do inside work outside and to do outside work on the inside. Let me explain what I mean. Paul loves lists, and in the list that follows, he is establishing a level of decency that will bring order to the community of faith. He's letting the Roman Christians know in no uncertain terms, this is how we are trying to be. This is who we are trying to be. He says that life within the community is dynamic and powerful. We are connected. We are accountable. Our lives depend on one another because they share a spirit. The difficult work of hating evil and holding fast to good is an inside job. This isn't a call to go and change the world. This is a call to clean our own house. We are called to not let the world creep in around the edges of our thinking. We are called to root it out, to stand against it, to call one another to a higher standard. We are to be in the business of transforming lives. This week, the sweetest little 7-week-old red heeler puppy named Drake joined me in life and ministry. Most of the time he sleeps, but when he's awake he is a sponge, soaking up so much about the world around him and trying to learn his place in it. We are a team, and he already understands that. But he is still a puppy. He has a lot to learn, and I have a lot to teach him. Or maybe it's really the other way around. Training a puppy is one of those things that requires patience and understanding. Puppy teeth are razor sharp, and Drake thinks he's supposed to bite my toes and heels. It's what he was born to do. He doesn't understand it hurts. He knows he is supposed to do his business on the puddle pad, but ripping that pad to shreds feels really good on his sore gums. Drake is just doing what he thinks he's supposed to, what his instincts tell him to do. And it's up to me to help him understand that we will all have a happier life if we can both learn to rein in our inhibitions. You see, about the 10th time I have to wipe up one of those 1-ounce puddles off the floor while he tries to rip the paper towel from my hand, my fully formed adult human brain wants me to punish him for his transgression. Friends, this is a fatal error when it comes to developing a relationship with a dog. Drake has no idea that he's doing anything that he isn't supposed to, and flicking his ears or swatting his backside will only compromise the trust that we are working so hard to develop. There is no reason in the world for Drake to be scared of me. We are on the same team. and we need to be able to trust each other. The world raging around us encourages us to lash out at those who don't agree with us or who think differently than us. Every day in the news we see pain and anger and violence that only seems to further perpetuate the trauma of our reality. We can give in to our darkest instincts, engage with evil, and strike the puppy while he fails at trying to overcome his faults. Or we can encourage him and love him, hold fast to what is good, and shape more than just his behavior, but really give him a chance at the best and happiest life. Just like with training a puppy, Paul is quick to point out the methodology for this kind of transformation in the life of a believer is always love. Our tools are respect and honor, and patience and prayer, not judgment and punishment and vengeance. We need to put our whole selves into this process to really get invested. We need to pour ourselves out with lavish hospitality for the community, for those within the community who are struggling to learn how to live and love as Christ calls us to love. Easier said than done, you may be thinking. That may be true, but it isn't complicated. Easy and simple rarely go together. But Paul reminds us that all we need to do is to rejoice in hope, be patient in suffering, and persevere in prayer. And we can never give up. We cannot keep count of how many times we've been sinned against. They asked Jesus, "How many times must I forgive my brother when he sins against me?" Jesus replies, "More than you can count." Paul says it like this: "Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord." In short, remember whose you are. But lest we think our work is only inwardly focused, our attention is quickly drawn to the door. First, we are called to pay attention to the threshold. In fact, it might be argued that the real work of the church doesn't take place inside or even outside, but in the space in between. The life of a church is revealed in how the guest is welcomed and included. The spirit of the church is felt by our neighbors who find themselves in need or simply in proximity to the church when they are caught up in lavish hospitality that draws them in and offers them a seat at the table. Now, having opened the door, Paul runs out with enthusiasm and opportunity, dragging us along in his wake. From verse 14 on, we are now living in the world around us. Paul writes, "Contribute to the needs of the saints. Be inventive in hospitality. Bless your enemies. No cursing under your breath. Laugh with your happy friends when they're happy. Share tears when they're down. Live in harmony with one another. Don't be stuck up. Make friends with nobodies. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Don't hit back. Discover beauty in everyone. If you've got it in you, get along with everybody. Don't insist on getting even. That's not for you to do. I'll do the judging, says God. I'll take care of it." Beloved, notice there is no crusading spirit for living in the world. There is only service and love and honor and respect. The same tools we took up on the inside, but out in the world we use them with even more tenderness. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Associate with the lowly. And then the whole vengeance being God's providence thing. What is behind this idea from Paul is that we are going to get hurt. That's the part we struggle with, regardless of whether we are insiders or outsiders. I'd be willing to do a whole lot more mission stuff if it didn't cost me so much, right? I'd be more willing to share faith, to trust my neighbor, to sacrifice for those who need if I didn't get taken advantage of, if I didn't get the rug pulled out from under me, if I knew everything was going to work out to my advantage, or at least to cause me minimal damage. Training a puppy would be a lot less frustrating if they never bit your hands and feet, if they never gnawed on a chair or tore up a shoe. But that has never been the promise. Safety was never high on Jesus' list of concerns. Why else would Paul be telling us how to respond if he was assuring us that things never went wrong? Why does Drake need training at all if he doesn't have anything to learn? Of course, the answer is rhetorical and goes both ways. We all have things to learn about living in community and kinship with Christ. Grace and mercy are at the heart of that learning. Patience and forgiveness are hard but necessary components in Christian living and in puppy training. No one said this stuff was going to be easy, only that it is worth it. Living in harmony, even with those who don't want or don't know how to live in harmony with us, is worth the effort it takes. Loving is worth the effort and the rejection and all the puppy bites we receive. Drake may nip at me 1,000 more times before he understands how his world can be different if he leaves that behavior behind. But the lifetime of ear scratches and cuddle pup will more than make up for it. Hope is worth the effort, even when my hands and arms are covered in scratches and despair seems so much more logical. And lastly, the coals. Paul writes, "Our scriptures tell us that if you see your enemy hungry, go buy that person lunch, or if he's thirsty, get him a drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads." We might be better off if Paul hadn't said this bit. It seems to lead to more malicious glee than it ought to. Killing them with kindness is still killing them. Maybe that's not exactly what Paul means. Eugene Peterson's The Message offers a different way of saying it. Your generosity will surprise him with goodness. What if Paul was really saying that the cold pleasure we take in getting revenge is nothing compared to the warm joy of serving or healing or helping? So go ahead, heap some coals. It'll do us all some good. And he returned to Matthew, and the only thing we can say is that Jesus is living out Paul's entire list. Get behind me, Satan. And then he carefully invites us to do the same. If any wants to be my follower, let them take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? What good is having a pup companion if they aren't brought up to understand that you and they are in this together to make each other's lives better? What love could be more genuine than a love that surrenders all, a love that endures suffering for one another? Jesus doesn't make a list because he is the list, and as such, he becomes our model and our hope. No, friends, we can't sacrifice our lives on a cross for the salvation of the world, but we can live each day in humble surrender to the need of the other. Drake needs a partner that understands and is willing to sacrifice a few weeks of puppy bites to fulfill his need to learn obedience. We all should seek to bring justice to a world that is broken and peace to a world tearing itself apart with divisions and hatred that rise up all around us every day. Like Peter, however, we too often wish for an easier faith, a pain-free, risk-free discipleship, puppy training with no nips and no accidents. God forbid it, Lord, he exclaims. The way Jesus responds to this outburst reminds us that when we seek such a path, we are in opposition to the work of Jesus in the world. The Satan in Hebrew means adversary, opposition. Some have likened it to a prosecuting attorney, the one who brings a different case to the court. Is it too much of a stretch to imagine that those who preach what Dietrich Bonhoeffer called cheap grace or a comfortable faith are taking the role of the Satan and diminishing the power of the supreme, genuine act of love that Jesus and through him all followers seek to live out? Get behind me, Satan. Get in my path. Follow my steps. Do as I do. Stop opposing. start following. Do not lag in zeal, Paul writes. Hold on until the end. Jesus says there are some standing there who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Whoops. Did Jesus get it wrong? Some Bible scholars think Matthew took this statement from Mark's gospel, and there the statement is, some will not die before they see the kingdom. It could be said that seeing what Christ has done and is doing in the world is something more accessible and therefore possible. But in this case, the statement is most definitely about the second coming, the return of Christ. Was Jesus wrong? Maybe this was a belief of the church at the time of Matthew's writing and was just put in Jesus' mouth by the gospel writer or a scribe. Or is it possible that there is some other way to interpret these words that we're missing? It's not immediately clear how important such a statement of faith is, or such a statement is to our faith today. One way to hear these words is to embrace the promise that God is in control, and we need not worry, even though the opposite seems more likely in our eyes. This is affirmation of God's sovereignty, even though we don't grasp the depths of it. In this series, it seems this is another case of where God's how is our why. We don't need to know the details, just to live responding to the truth and taking our role in the promise. We just need to live a life like Christ, a life that detests evil and holds fast to all that is good, a life that makes the world ask why. And when they ask, and they will, we can say, because God. In the creating, redeeming, and sustaining name of God's one and only Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.